This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're going to explore the manufacturing landscape in the Empire State, including what the industry thinks state policymakers could do to boost employment and production. To do that, we're joined once again by Randy Wolken, President and CEO of MACNY, the Manufacturers Association. So, Randy, I want to begin our discussion by talking about a moving target in Albany right now, the fate of the 2019 Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which set ambitious emission goals that the governor is clearly interested in changing, such as how methane emissions are calculated. What does this topic mean for your members?
Sure, that's a great question. Energy is absolutely critical for a growing and expanding manufacturing base. And I think what we've seen more recently is a huge amount of investment, not only from interests that are coming here, such as the semiconductor sector, but also existing companies just need affordable, reliable, available, and actually diverse forms of energy and need an abundance of it. That has changed so much since the climate law was passed in 2019. It's one of the reasons why we actually support taking a look at it today, given the needs of both industry and individuals.
And you bring up the other side of this equation, which is the cost of energy. And there's some debate right now about whether that 2019 law is what is actually driving the costs from utilities. How do you read this? Do you view that 2019 mandate with its statutory goals and the trajectory it's set New York on as the reason behind some of the cost drivers now and into the future? Or do you look at other Albany policies as part of the problem?
Well, part of it is the landscape has changed. I mean, just look at how much more energy we need. I mean, if you look at NISO, the PSC, they're all suggesting we just don't have enough electricity, don't have enough energy, even base energy, to meet our needs going into the future. So I think the landscape is one of the most important things we have to look at that's changed, both in terms of our energy need, as well as really some of the headwinds now related to doing more renewables. I mean, truth of the matter is meeting those goals in today's environment would be very costly. And I think it would also rob us of economic growth and development, specifically in the advanced manufacturing sector.
Well, one of the ideas that state policymakers seem to be kicking around on the energy front is this idea that, hey, if you are a big energy user and you want to come to New York or grow in New York, you're going to be responsible for essentially figuring out where you're going to get power from. Is that detrimental to the development of business, or do you think that is a reasonable expectation if you are going to use a lot of power and maybe disrupt the local demand figures?
I don't think it's a reasonable expectation if you want growth. I mean, the good news about growth is it provides additional revenues to do more things, to do the things that Albany wants to do and that local communities want to do. So what you want to do is you want to provide the energy. I think one of the reasons why new nuclear and other forms of energy that are being talked about are absolutely critical now. If you look at the economic landscape related to reshoring, related to advanced manufacturing, New York State is a top manufacturing state, probably can be a top 5 manufacturing state if we have an abundance of energy and is cost competitive. So I think it would be to our disadvantage to sort of say, hey, industry, if you want to come here, bring your own energy. That's not really what they do. They don't generate energy, they don't provide energy. So I think it would be very short-sighted. It wouldn't allow us to grow both within the communities and more importantly as a state.
Well, I definitely want to touch more on energy and emissions, but first I want to talk about the landscape as it exists right now in New York, because I was looking at a February survey from the Federal Reserve on Empire State manufacturing, and they found the following, quote, firms grew more optimistic that conditions would improve in the months ahead, with employment expected to grow. Do you view that sort of rosy picture as a response to state policies, federal policies, or maybe broader economic trends?
I would say all the above.
Okay.
I think the reality is what you have is you have a state that's very active and interested in industry growth. You have a federal government that wants to reshore, would love to see industries grow. And then I do think the general landscape globally makes the US a great place to make things, and specifically New York with abundance of water. Actually, we have the cleanest grid in the country already. Quite frankly, we need to continue to add to it. We've always been an advocate of adding to it, but we do have a significant amount of green energy. We think we can have more as well as over more abundance. I think new nuclear is a part of that. And on top of it, we have a great workforce, great education system, learning system. You put workforce, energy, and water together, pretty robust opportunity. Plus, on top of that, we're a manufacturing state. We've been making things effectively and efficiently for decades upon decades. So I think we're a very attractive place for growth. That's existing companies as well as future companies, some of that have been announced over the last few years.
Well, in recent years, some of the actions that state policymakers have taken to support manufacturing have ranged from things that are a huge swing, like billions of dollars in subsidies that helped attract Micron to central New York, to things
Mhm.
more around the margins, like changing some of the tax liabilities and how
Yes.
certain companies are taxed based on their structure. Looking at 2026 and beyond, what are you hoping state policymakers do to help attract new manufacturing, retain manufacturing, and maybe grow some manufacturing?
Yeah, it's one of the top items to grow manufacturing, and I really think we can be and should be in growth mode. One is we have a big decision to make related to HR1 and potentially decoupling that's been proposed. We'd like to see that not happen. Expensing matters when it comes to R&D and investment, so we'd like to stay coupled with the federal government so we stay competitive.
Can you explain what
Sure.
was happening there?
Sure. So states have to decide either naturally to continue to fall in with the federal requirements around expensing for capital investments and R&D, or they decouple and take the expensing over what they would normally declare reasonable expensing. So the federal rules would allow immediate expensing. And New York State's, depending on the type of investment, could be spread out for a capital facility, might be 39 years. For some more reasonable capital investments, might be 5 or 10 years. But that expensing allows for that cash to be reinvested. So we're concerned that billions of dollars of investment won't happen, could happen someplace else if we don't stay coupled with the federal government. And this is somewhat esoteric tax law. Not everybody understands this, but the reality is our members do. Small and medium in particular would see significant disadvantage in terms of reinvesting in both capital and R&D if we don't stay coupled with the federal government. So we are advocating to stay coupled with the federal government. We think it's worth billions of dollars of reinvestment. By the way, just so you know, you don't lose out on those tax dollars. They're just taking in differently. So the truth of the matter is, it encourages investment. People take their tax dollars that would have been going in today and they reinvest, which means even more billions of dollars of investment. So, like I said, somewhat esoteric in terms of difficult to understand, but boy, what a big deal it makes if we stay coupled with the federal government.
Well, I want to touch on more of your agenda items, but first, let me reintroduce you for listeners just joining us. This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're speaking with Randy Wolken, President and CEO of MACNY, the Manufacturers Association. So, what else is on your wish list for Albany policymakers in 2026?
Sure. One of them is a straightforward and affordable energy agenda. We know we need to communicate to current investors and future investors in the manufacturing sector that they'll have affordable, reliable, and abundant energy. And that includes natural gas, by the way. You cannot make things in a modern economy without natural gas. So you have to continue to have that system until there are replacements, and there aren't any today, for that kind of high intensity energy usage that manufacturers need. So we'll need a robust natural gas network for the foreseeable future. And that's just reality across the globe. So we need, and we also need nuclear. I think the greenest, longest term base power will be new nuclear. So I'm really excited that the governor and many others are leaning into new nuclear as a part of the energy policy. And then we have to have a reliable grid. And companies that don't use a lot of energy have to have availability and reliability. So energy will always be a top priority. We're also interested in workforce development. We run several really important apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programming, as do others. Investment in workforce, skilled labor, continue to advance skilled labor is really a high priority. We think we can win in that space too. So those three things sort of top the list of importance for manufacturers and advanced tech.
Well, you brought up nuclear a few times, and I understand the reliability component of nuclear, but if New York is going to head down that road, I'm going to have a lot more gray hair by the time we actually are realizing any new nuclear energy. So why lean into that form of power as opposed to something that can be realized on a much quicker timeline and, based on what we've seen in other states, potentially cheaper?
There's no doubt you're going to have to do all the above strategy. I think the governor's correct, and many others talking about all the above. Yes, we're going to have enough immediate energy availability for what's already here. We also need to plan for the long term. And the new nuclear platforms and opportunities are both safe and highly reliable. They offer 24/7 green power. So if we want to begin, and I think we should continue to advance our green goals, we need a form of energy that's 24/7 reliable base power on top of the renewables, which I'm sure we'll continue to develop. So it's really what we've learned is we need to do that. You just look north to our neighbors in Ontario, have a massive amount of both in current investment and recent new investment coming in small modular reactors. We can learn a lot from them. But the world is waking up to this green power. Yes, it's not immediate. We'll have to do other things in the short term, but it would provide a huge amount of opportunity for the long term and really power the industrial investments, which will take place today, but it'll be around for decades.
This may be outside your bailiwick, so feel free to pass on it. But when we talk about all of the above energy, does that need to include hydraulic fracturing or hydrofracking that the state banned more than a decade ago?
Yeah, I'm not a in no way can really speak to that particular form of really getting natural gas. I do think that natural gas is a part of the solution. By the way, we know our neighbors to the south have a ton of natural gas as well. But I would tell you that natural gas is a part of the sort of the medium to short term solutions. It's the cleanest fossil fuel we have. It's readily available in the Northeast, and it can keep the cost down as we make a transition to greener, cleaner forms of energy. So I think it's the bridge fuel we'll have to have. We don't want to go to coal. That doesn't make a lot of sense. We certainly need enough energy. Here's the big challenge, David. The energy needs a hockey stick. Before it was flat. Energy needs were flat for decades. Now it's a massive amount of new energy required for both industry and for individuals. If we want to be competitive, we need new forms of energy. So I think all the above is the only way we get there.
So state policies are not crafted in a vacuum. There is obviously the implications of federal changes, and at the federal level, probably nothing is bigger in terms of impact, or at least the conversation, than tariffs, and not just tariffs, but the ambiguity around tariffs, which are implemented, struck down, changed from one day to the next. How does both the tariffs and the moving aspect of the tariffs impact New York manufacturers?
I think the uncertainty was probably the biggest impact. The fact that it could be here today and gone tomorrow, or change today or change tomorrow. I think the recent Supreme Court decision helps clarify what the president's capacity is, so that will bring some certainty. I do think we'll see tariffs. I don't think tariffs are going away. It's a part of the landscape. Having said that, more certainty, I think, is now going to be provided. And really what manufacturers do, our members do, is sort of plan for what's transpiring. There already was a movement to make things closer to home. There's a lot of good reasons to make things in your backyard for that use. At the same time, it's a global industry. So this certainty, I think, will be even more important than the rate. But having said that, yeah, it has caused some difficulty the last year. And my hope is that it will settle to a place where people can make strategic decisions.
Well, we've been speaking with Randy Wolken. He's the president and CEO of MACNY, the Manufacturers Association. Randy, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, David.
And for more Capital Press Room content, visit capitalpressroom.org or wherever you download your favorite podcasts.